Hello, my dears. Tonight's story follows Mara, who flees Boston to escape a controlling ex, only to find her new neighbor Rowan has the same face and a completely different heart. What begins as fear, rain, and old wounds slowly becomes a tender lesson in seeing someone clearly. When I left Boston, I did it with the dignity of a woman who had slept 3 hours, cried into a reusable grocery bag, and accidentally packed her toaster in the same box as her bras. I wish I could say I made a clean, cinematic escape, rain on the windshield, and dignity in the rearview mirror. In reality, I drove 3 blocks before turning back for a box of cables that apparently connected every electronic object I owned to modern life. By the time I finally got on the highway, I wore yesterday's sweatshirt, my hair was clipped up with something meant for bread bags, and the rental van smelled like cardboard, panic, and the lavender candle Cassidy had once said made my apartment feel almost intentional. I took it anyway. That was one of the humiliating things about leaving someone who had made you feel small for years. You did not only have to leave their body, their voice, their toothbrush in the cup beside yours. You had to leave all the little verdicts they had passed on you and then pretend not to hear them from the passenger seat. Cassidy had never yelled much. That would have been easier to explain to people. She had simply tilted her head and smiled, soft as silk, while pointing out that I was overreacting, underachieving, overdressing, underdressing, too needy, too distant, too funny in a way that made people uncomfortable, not funny enough when her friends were around, talented but unfocused, pretty but not in a way I understood how to use. She had loved me with one hand and edited me with the other. For 3 years, I let her. Then I found myself apologizing because she had forgotten my birthday dinner, and some last stubborn animal in me lifted its head and said, "Absolutely not." So I packed everything I owned into a rented van and drove west because Portland, Oregon was the farthest city I could name without opening a map. This was not a plan. This was a geography-based tantrum. I was very proud of it. By the time I reached my new rental house, I had crossed so much country that Boston felt less like a place I had lived than a bad dream with seafood. I arrived in Portland under a low gray sky that looked like it had been hand-washed and hung over the city to dry. The neighborhood was narrow and green, all mossy retaining walls, wet sidewalks, overgrown gardens, and houses painted in colors that would have seemed whimsical anywhere else, and here looked like they had grown naturally from the soil. My rental sat halfway down a sloping street in a row of old homes with deep porches and stubborn personalities. It was a small blue house, with white trim, a warped gate, and a pear tree that dropped fruit with theatrical timing. The landlord, a retired nurse named Hattie, whom I had only met through email, had left the key under a ceramic frog on the porch and a note on the counter that said, "Welcome, Mara. The downstairs window sticks. The raccoons are bold." Do not trust the left front burner. It was the warmest greeting I had received in months. I carried in boxes until my arms trembled, dragged my mattress into the bedroom, and left it on the floor because assembling the frame required emotional resources I had used up somewhere in Nebraska. Around dusk, rain began to whisper against the roof. I stood in the kitchen eating crackers over the sink because plates were still theoretical, and congratulated myself on being brave enough to start over. Then I looked out the window and saw Cassidy in the yard next door. For one long second, the entire world stopped being a world. It became a fist. She stood beyond the fence with one hand on a stack of cedar boards, her face turned slightly toward the rain, her dark hair tied at the nape of her neck. Cassidy's face. Cassidy's cheekbones, Cassidy's mouth, Cassidy's straight nose and sharp brows, and the little indentation beside her lower lip that I had once kissed in a hotel elevator in Montreal while believing myself to be the luckiest idiot alive. My knees went loose so quickly I had to grab the counter. A cracker snapped in my hand. I remember that tiny detail because trauma has a ridiculous filing system. I did not scream. I did not run. I did, however, whisper, "Nope," with the spiritual conviction of a woman rejecting a demon in a horror movie. The woman next door looked up. Not directly at me, not yet. Her attention shifted because maybe she felt me staring like an absolute lunatic through a half-unpacked kitchen. She wore a flannel shirt with the sleeves shoved up, and her forearms were strong and dusty with sawdust. There was a pencil tucked behind her ear, something Cassidy would only have done as a costume choice if she wanted people at a party to believe she was whimsical. This woman moved differently too. Less liquid, less arranged. She reached for the boards with the economical patience of someone used to wait. My heart, which had slammed itself against my ribs at the first sight of her, began to make confused, irregular attempts at restarting. I told myself there were rational explanations. Maybe Cassidy had a secret woodworking phase. Maybe she had followed me across the country, dyed her soul, and taken up carpentry as a long-form manipulation. Maybe I had died in Wyoming, and this was the afterlife, designed specifically by a committee of my worst decisions. Then the woman turned fully, and even through the rain-specked glass, I saw the difference. Not in the face. That was the terrible part. The face was the same, but the gaze was not. Cassidy looked at people as if she were waiting for them to become useful. This woman looked at the world as if she expected it to be difficult and had already decided she would not ask it for mercy. I stepped backward anyway. I sat on the kitchen floor between a box labeled MISC and a box labeled MISC but sad, and I considered getting back in the van and driving until the ocean stopped me. Instead, after several minutes of breathing like a raccoon trapped in a chimney, I called Delia. She answered on the second ring with, "Are you alive? Are you in Oregon? And did the van explode?" I said, "Cassidy is next door." There was a silence so complete I could hear her moving the phone away from her mouth, probably to check whether the laws of physics had changed. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. "When you say Cassidy is next door, do you mean emotionally, spiritually, or in a felony way?" "Physically, I saw her. Except not her, I think. Mara. She has the face." Delia inhaled. Delia had been my best friend since college, and had earned the right to use silence as punctuation. Her twin? Cassidy never told me she had a twin. Of course she didn't. Why would Cassidy share information when she could hoard it like a dragon sitting on a pile of other people's context? I closed my eyes. I'm going to throw up. Into a box you have already labeled, or should we invent a new category? That made me laugh, which made me cry, which made me laugh harder, which is the kind of thing people call healing when they are not the person making seal noises on an unfamiliar kitchen floor. Delia stayed on the phone with me while I checked the locks, found sheets, and lay on the mattress under a coat because the blankets were in one of 6 identical cardboard cubes. Every creak of the new house sounded accusatory. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Cassidy's face in the rain, only it was not Cassidy's face, except it wasn't. The human brain is an idiot with expensive lighting. I did not drive away. I want credit for that. I want a small plaque. The next morning, I met my neighbor properly while wearing pajama pants with tiny lemons on them and carrying a plunger. This was not how I would have chosen to introduce myself to the woman with my ex-girlfriend's face, but the sink had backed up while I tried to fix the burner, and disaster had multiplied. I found the plunger in the shed, marched outside with the exhausted confidence of a pioneer woman, and discovered that my gate had swollen in the rain and would not open. I was pulling at it with both hands and muttering language that would have disappointed my late grandmother when a voice on the other side said, "You have to lift first." My entire spine tried to leave my body. I looked through the slats, and there she was on the sidewalk, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee in one hand and a canvas tool bag in the other. Up close, the resemblance was worse and better. Her eyes were the same dark hazel with green near the center, but nothing else about her offered itself for approval. Cassidy had always seemed lit from the front, all glossy hair and deliberate softness. This woman had a thin scar through one eyebrow, a smudge of something on her jaw, and the alert stillness of a feral cat deciding whether you were worth biting. "Lift the gate," she said again. "Then pull." "Right," I said, and lifted so abruptly I nearly hit myself in the face with the latch. Thank you. I was actually testing the gate's commitment to personal growth. Her mouth twitched, but it did not become a smile. How's it doing? Poorly, but I relate. I got the gate open and stepped out with my plunger like a royal scepter. She looked at it. I looked at it. The coffee steamed between us. I'm Mara, I said, because at some point you have to stop letting plumbing dictate the tone of your life. I moved in yesterday. Rowan, she said. Her voice was lower than Cassidy's, rougher at the edges, as if she used it less and meant it more. I'm next door. I gathered, unless Portland assigns neighborhood carpenters as part of the welcome package. Not for rentals. Shame. The brochure implied more whimsy. There it was again. The almost smile, gone before I could prove it in court. She handed me one of the coffees. Hattie asked me to check whether you got in. She worries. I accepted it automatically, touched by the gesture before remembering that people with Cassidy's face could also hand you things. Thanks, that's kind. Hattie is kind. I'm just nearby. Direct, dry. Not hostile exactly, but guarded enough to have its own weather system. I took a sip of coffee and burned my tongue because apparently I needed more sensory punishment. I'm from Boston, I said, because nervousness turns me into a woman who volunteers irrelevant facts to strangers. So if I seem confused by hills, moss, or human kindness, that's why. Rowan went completely still. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else might have noticed. But I noticed because I had spent 3 years studying a face like hers for signs of incoming weather. The air shifted. Her eyes moved over me once, not rudely, not even curiously, but with the awful precision of recognition. She knew. She knew before I said Cassidy's name. Maybe it was my accent, maybe my age, maybe the way I had flinched when she stepped closer. Maybe Cassidy had described me in some careless, cutting story, reducing me to a type: the designer, the girlfriend, the woman who tried too hard. Rowan's hand tightened around the handle of her tool bag. Boston, she repeated. Yeah. My voice came out smaller than I liked. I lived there a long time. With Cassidy? Hearing the name in Rowan's voice was like stepping barefoot on glass I had forgotten was on the floor. I gripped the plunger. If I had been murdered then, the police report would have been humiliating. You know her. Rowan's expression closed. It was swift and total, a door shutting from the inside. Unfortunately, I swallowed. She never told me about you. That sounds like her. It was not bitterness exactly. Bitterness has heat. This was colder, older, packed down into something hard enough to build on. I didn't know, I said, though I was not sure what I was apologizing for yet. About you, about this. I would never have moved in next door to me on purpose. Yes, no, I mean, obviously no. That would be such a niche form of masochism. This time she did not almost smile. She looked past me toward my house, toward the boxes visible in the front window, toward whatever cosmic joke had delivered me to her fence. You should call a plumber for the sink, she said. The pipes in that place are old. Then she stepped around me, walked to her gate, and went inside without another word. The coffee remained in my hand, warm and undeserved. I stood there in lemon pajama pants, holding a plunger and coffee from the identical twin my ex had never mentioned, and said to no one, "Great! Normal, very normal beginning." It was not normal. For the first 2 weeks, the neighborhood felt like a stage set built by someone who had read my diary and developed a mean streak. Rowan was everywhere by virtue of being, very inconveniently, next door. She came out at 7 in the morning to load wood into her truck while I sat on my porch, pretending to enjoy oatmeal. She crossed the street with a reusable bag of groceries while I fought my recycling bin in the wind. She stood in line behind me at the coffee shop on Division, silent and tall and smelling faintly of cedar, while I ordered a latte under the name Nora because panic had apparently changed my identity. Nora, the barista called, and Rowan's eyebrow lifted. I took the cup and said, "Witness protection," then fled before she could answer. I learned the rhythm of the street because working remotely gave me too much time to observe it. My graphic design job had survived the move because my boss believed in flexible geography, and I had not told her it was more emotional evacuation than lifestyle choice. I set up my desk in the small room facing the backyard, wedged between boxes and the window that looked toward Rowan's studio. I spent my days designing packaging for artisanal snacks and pretending not to notice every thump, saw whine, and measured scrape from next door. Portland settled around me in damp layers. Mornings smelled like coffee and rain-wet soil. Afternoons brought delivery trucks, kids on bikes, dogs with raincoats more expensive than my own, and neighbors who introduced themselves with jars of jam, advice about slugs, and the unnerving confidence of people who composted correctly. I bought a rain jacket in a color called Storm Fig and discovered that walking in drizzle was apparently a personality trait. Little by little, the house became less hostile. I unpacked plates. I assembled the bed frame badly, then reassembled it after realizing one support slat had ended up in a position that felt emotionally symbolic. I hung art. I put the lavender candle in a drawer, and then one night threw it away with the grim resolve of someone disposing of evidence. Through all of this, Rowan remained adjacent. That was the word I used in my head. Not present. Not involved. Adjacent. We exchanged brief comments at the mailbox. She told me which day yard waste went out. I told her the pear tree had attempted murder by dropping fruit near my head. She said, "It does that," as if the tree were an old associate with known habits. She did not ask about Cassidy. I did not offer. But the unsaid thing lived between us like a third neighbor who never brought in its bins. The first time I saw Rowan really laugh, it was because Mr. Alvarez from 2 houses down tried to teach his ancient dachshund to wear tiny boots, and the dog lay down in the sidewalk with the solemnity of a labor organizer. Rowan had been unloading boards from her truck. She stopped, braced one hand on the tailgate, and laughed once, quick and startled, her whole face changing before she caught herself. Cassidy's laugh had been beautiful and strategic. She released it like perfume, calibrated to make the room turn toward her. Rowan's laugh escaped. It surprised her as much as anyone. I stood behind my screen door holding a mug of tea and felt something in me lean forward. Then I hated myself for it. Attraction after Cassidy felt like betrayal of my own rescue. Noticing differences was one thing. Feeling my body respond to them was another. Rowan's hands were the worst. Cassidy's hands had been elegant, always manicured, moving through air as if conducting the admiration around her. Rowan's hands were square-palmed, nicked and practical, with short nails and a thin white scar across the base of her thumb. They held coffee cups, lumber, keys, the mail, a pencil, with absolute certainty. Watching them made me think of repair. Watching them made me think of being held by someone who knew the difference between delicate and breakable. This was not a thought I was proud of, so I reported it to no one, especially not Delia. Then one afternoon, about 3 weeks after I arrived, I heard the steady scrape of a handplane from next door. It was a softer sound than the saws, almost intimate. A shush and curl, shush and curl. I was supposed to be revising a label for organic chickpea puffs. Instead, I wandered to the back window under the legal fiction of resting my eyes. Rowan's studio sat behind her house, a long structure with big windows and a sliding door she kept open when the weather behaved. Between our yards, the fence had a narrow gap where one board had warped away from the others. Through it, I could see a slice of her workbench and the angle of her body as she bent over a plank. She wore a white tank under an open flannel, hair twisted up messily, a line of concentration between her brows. The late light caught dust in the air and turned it gold. She pushed the plane forward, steady and sure, and a ribbon of wood curled away from the blade. I should not have watched. It was intrusive, the sort of thing you do for 2 seconds by accident and then stop because you understand property lines. I watched longer. I watched the muscles in her forearm shift. I watched her pause to test the surface with her fingertips, eyes half closed as if listening through her skin. I watched her be so completely herself that the resemblance to Cassidy blurred at the edges. Desire arrived quietly, which made it worse. Not a lightning strike, not drama. Just a warmth low in my chest, a pull, a wish to know what her focus would feel like turned toward me. Then Rowan looked up. Our eyes met through the gap in the fence. I ducked so fast I hit my forehead on the window frame. Ow, mature, I whispered to myself, crouched under my own window like a criminal raccoon. Outside, there was silence. Then Rowan's voice carried over the fence, dry as kindling. You know the fence has a gate. I considered moving to Alaska. Instead, I stood slowly, rubbing my forehead. Rowan was in her yard now, arms crossed, expression unreadable except for the faintest curve at one corner of her mouth. I was not spying, I said. I was observing local craftsmanship for cultural integration purposes. From behind a curtain. It's an immersive method. How's your head? Structurally embarrassed. She looked at me for a moment, and this time, the almost smile became real enough to make my stomach flip with such violence I nearly resented her. Don't stare at the blade when I'm working, she said. It's distracting. Right, sorry, I didn't mean to. I know. The smile faded, not unkindly. Just don't. She went back inside, leaving me in the hot wash of shame and something else. That evening, I left a note in her mailbox. Sorry for being a fence goblin. Your work is beautiful. I signed it Mara because Nora would have raised questions. The next morning, on my porch, I found a small rectangle of sanded cedar, smooth as water, with 2 words penciled on it. Gate Goblin. I laughed so hard I had to sit down on the step. For several days after that, things were almost easy. Not comfortable, not exactly, but less jagged. Rowan acknowledged me with a nod that felt less like a warning. I stopped dropping objects whenever she appeared. We spoke across the fence about small things. The raccoons, the pear tree, a neighborhood cat named Senator who belonged to no one and judged everyone. At the coffee shop, she told the barista my name was Mara before I could invent another federal alias. Traitor, I said. Public service, she replied. I learned that she made custom furniture, mostly tables, chairs, shelves, and the occasional built-in for people with more money than humility. She learned that I designed things people touched in grocery stores without thinking about them. So you make people want crackers, she said. Emotionally, yes. Important work. Thank you. Society collapses without snack desire. She did not volunteer much about herself, but what she offered felt like actual material, not performance. She liked black coffee, old houses, rain before noon, and music without lyrics when she worked. She hated being asked whether woodworking was empowering, hated clients who said, I could make that, while paying her to make it, and hated cilantro with a force I admired. Cassidy had loved cilantro because hating it was, according to her, a little pedestrian. I had pretended to enjoy it for 2 years. One night, making tacos alone in my kitchen, I threw the entire bunch into the compost and felt like I had joined a resistance movement. The incident that broke the surface began with a raccoon and ended with me standing in Rowan's kitchen wearing one of her sweatshirts while she held a flashlight between her teeth. It happened during a windstorm in early October. The power went out around 8, just as I was on a video call with Delia, who froze mid-sentence with her mouth open in a way I screenshotted before my laptop died, because friendship is a sacred bond. The house went black except for the gray flicker of the street outside. Rain hammered the windows. Somewhere behind the wall, something thumped. I stood in my living room holding a decorative candle shaped like a mushroom and said, "No." The thump came again, then a scrape, then a sound like tiny hands auditioning for a burglary. Hattie's note returned to me in full. The raccoons are bold. I texted Rowan, I think something is in my wall, and immediately regretted every decision that had led to that sentence. She replied 30 seconds later. On my way, no punctuation. Very Rowan. She arrived in a rain jacket with a toolbox and the grim calm of someone responding to a maritime disaster. I opened the door, holding the mushroom candle. She looked at it. Weapon? Emotional support fungus. Good. Stay behind me. Gladly. Feminism has limits. The thing in the wall scratched again, and I made a noise I will describe as dignified because this is my story. Rowan followed the sound to the laundry room, crouched, and opened a small access panel I had not known existed. Wind pushed rain against the back door. The power remained out. Her flashlight beam cut across pipes, insulation, and two shining little eyes. Raccoon, she said around the flashlight. I knew it, I whispered. It knows I'm new. It's not personal. That's what it wants you to think. The raccoon retreated deeper into whatever illegal tunnel system it had established in my rental house. Rowan sighed, removed the flashlight from her mouth, and said, It probably came in through the loose vent under the back steps. I can close it once it leaves. Once it leaves, as in voluntarily. Unless you want to negotiate. I fold under pressure. The storm chose that moment to throw a branch against the side of the house. I jumped. The mushroom candle flew out of my hand, hit the washing machine, and broke cleanly in half. Rowan looked from the candle to me. Your fungus didn't make it. It died doing what it loved, being useless. And there, in the dark laundry room with a raccoon in the wall, Rowan laughed. Not the small sidewalk laugh, a real one, low and helpless, her shoulders loosening. It changed the room. It changed me in the room. I laughed too, because grief and terror and attraction had all gotten tangled inside me, and suddenly the knot slipped. We waited for the raccoon to relocate itself, which it eventually did with great offended dignity, and then the rain intensified so abruptly that the back steps became a waterfall. Rowan insisted on checking the vent anyway. I insisted on helping, by which I mean I held the flashlight poorly and got soaked. By the time the vent was secured, my hair was plastered to my face, my sweater weighed 70 pounds, and Rowan looked only mildly damp because some women are built by folklore. Come next door, she said. You'll freeze in that. I have clothes. In boxes? I opened my mouth, closed it. Some boxes are a lifestyle. Come on. Her house was warmer than mine, lit by battery lanterns and the occasional flash of lightning. It smelled like cedar, coffee, and something savory simmering on a gas stove. The rooms were spare, but not empty. Handmade shelves, a long live-edge table, 2 worn leather chairs, books by the couch, a blanket folded with unnecessary precision. Nothing glossy. If Cassidy's apartment had been an argument for her taste, Rowan's house felt like a place where objects earned their keep. She handed me a towel and a faded sweatshirt from a hook by the door. Bathroom's there. Put that on. Very commanding. Very wet, she said, pointing at me. I changed in the bathroom, trying not to notice that the sweatshirt smelled like clean cotton and sawdust and Rowan's skin. I failed. When I came out, she had set 2 bowls of soup on the table. Power's out, she said. Stove works. You keep emergency soup? I keep soup. Emergencies happen. I sat across from her, sleeves covering half my hands, and felt the strange intimacy of being in a near stranger's clothes. Rain beat the windows. Lantern light moved over her face, making it familiar and unfamiliar with each flicker. For a while, we ate without speaking. The silence was not empty. That was another difference. Cassidy used silence as punishment or stagecraft. Rowan's silence had boards and beams in it. It held. You knew who I was, I said finally. She looked at her bowl. At the gate. Yes. Because Cassidy told you about me? Not by name. Rowan's mouth tightened. She mentioned a designer from Boston. A girlfriend. She made it sound... I waited. like a phase she was bored with but hadn't thrown out yet. The words struck so cleanly, I almost admired their cruelty as craftsmanship. Cassidy had always known how to make dismissal sound casual. I stared at the soup. That sounds like her too. I'm sorry. I laughed once, without humor. People keep saying that, and I never know where to put it. It's not like you did it. Rowan's hands rested around her bowl. The knuckles were scratched. No, but I know what she does. Outside, thunder rolled over the roofs. I should have asked then. I wanted to. Why haven't you spoken in 4 years? What did she do to you? Why did she never say your name? Instead, I said, she made me feel like I was always almost right, almost interesting, almost lovable if I could just adjust one more thing. Rowan did not look away. That made it easier and harder. By the end, I had this whole internal version of her voice. Efficient, portable, very eco-friendly. I could ruin my own day without her even being in the room. My attempt at a smile did not hold. I moved here because I didn't know how else to stop hearing it. Rowan's face softened by degrees, so small I might have missed it if I had not been watching for danger. Did it work? Not yet. I looked down at the sweatshirt sleeves. Then I saw you, and for about 10 seconds I thought the universe had escalated to psychological warfare. Understandable. I almost left. Why didn't you? I considered making a joke. I had several available, because the van had bad mileage. Because the raccoon union had already accepted me. Because my knees stopped working. Instead, I said the truth, which felt reckless in the lantern light. Because I was tired of letting Cassidy decide where I could exist. Rowan's gaze changed. It settled on me, steady and dark, and the charge between us returned so sharply I could hear my own breath. We were not touching. We were separated by a table, 2 bowls, 4 years of her silence with Cassidy, 3 years of my damage, and one identical face that had no right to be both obstacle and invitation. Still, something moved. Not toward Cassidy, not backward, toward Rowan, sitting across from me with rain in her hair and soup on the table and the same mouth that had once lied to me, shaped now around quiet. She felt it too. I knew because her fingers tightened once on the bowl, then released. Mara, she said, and my name in her voice was not a warning this time. It was a boundary being drawn with care. I'm not her. I know. It came out too fast. Too desperate. I know that. Do you? I had no answer that would not insult both of us. She stood and took our bowls to the sink. The moment folded in on itself, unnamed. When the rain eased, she walked me back to my house with a flashlight. At my door, I gave her the sweatshirt back, though every stupid cell in my body objected. She held it against her side. Text if the raccoon files an appeal, she said. I'll represent myself poorly. Another almost smile. Another retreat. I went inside, leaned my back against the door, and pressed both hands over my face until my pulse stopped trying to run through walls. Before we continue, a quick note. This version is made for YouTube, so some of the more passionate and intimate scenes between these two women have been softened or shortened. The full, uncensored version, with every private moment left intact, is available on my Patreon. If you want to experience the complete story the way it was written, the link is in the description below. The morning after the raccoon incident, I woke up with 2 discoveries. First, my rental house smelled faintly of damp insulation and betrayal. Second, wanting Rowan felt nothing like wanting Cassidy, which should have reassured me and instead made me behave like a woman being chased by bees. I began pulling back with all the elegance of a malfunctioning garage door. If Rowan came to the mailbox, I suddenly remembered an urgent email. If she was at the coffee shop, I developed a passionate interest in walking 6 extra blocks to another one where the latte tasted like warm regret. When she texted to ask whether the raccoon had returned, I replied, "No sightings, thanks," with the tone of a corporate facilities update. I told myself I was being responsible, mature, ethical even. I was refusing to project my unresolved trauma onto an innocent woman who happened to share DNA with my ex. This sounded excellent in my head, where I could not hear the cowardice squeaking underneath. The problem was that Rowan noticed. Of course she noticed. Rowan noticed warped boards, changed pressure, and the woman next door turning from fence goblin to polite weather satellite. She matched me with a precision that felt deserved and unbearable. Her nods became shorter. Her texts stopped. At the coffee shop, when I accidentally arrived at the same time, she let me order first and then stepped outside to take a call she probably did not have. The gap between us widened by inches and then yards. I told myself this was safer. I told myself attraction was not destiny. I told myself many things in the voice of someone building a wall and calling it architecture. Delia, who had received enough evasive voice messages from me to identify a pattern from space, finally sent one back at midnight. "Hello, emotionally compromised Oregon cryptid," she began. "I have reviewed the evidence. You are doing the thing where you preemptively punish someone for a crime they haven't committed yet. Classic Mara. 5 stars for self-protection, 1 star for fairness, no notes on the raccoon except that I support him. Call me when you are ready to stop being a haunted Roomba." I played it 3 times, each time hating her more for being right. Then I lay in bed, listening to rain and the old pipes and my own defense mechanisms arranging themselves into a courtroom drama. The worst part was that I could not honestly say I was only afraid of hurting Rowan. I was also afraid she would hurt me without meaning to. A shared face felt like a trap my body might spring on itself. I would look at Rowan turning a key, lifting a mug, pushing damp hair off her forehead, and a memory of Cassidy would flare like a match. Not because Rowan invited it, because my nervous system was a poorly trained dog. Then Rowan would speak in that low, dry voice, or pause before answering because she actually meant to answer, and the match would go out. I began to understand that seeing someone clearly was not a single revelation. It was work. It was returning, again and again, from the ghost to the person. I did not know whether I was strong enough to do that without making Rowan pay for the effort. The first fragment of Rowan's history came a week later at a neighborhood dinner I tried to avoid and failed. Mr. Alvarez's daughter had organized a potluck in his backyard because his birthday coincided with a rare evening without rain, and refusing would have required a lie more elaborate than I had energy to maintain. I brought a salad that looked like I had assembled it during a small earthquake. Rowan brought a walnut bench she had made for Mr. Alvarez's porch, which was such an unfairly competent gift that my salad wilted in shame. The yard glowed with string lights. People balanced paper plates. Children chased each other between raised beds. Senator the cat sat under a chair like a disapproving aristocrat, and I tried very hard not to watch Rowan being loved quietly by the neighborhood. That was the thing. People did not swarm her. She did not invite swarming, but they trusted her. They asked about shelves, gates, a loose stair, a table leg. They touched her shoulder in passing, and she tolerated it with the stiff patience of someone who had learned community reluctantly and then become part of it anyway. I stood near the drinks table, holding a cup of sparkling water and pretending the lime wedge was fascinating, when a woman named Priya asked Rowan about a cherrywood dining table. "You made the one in the shop on Hawthorne, right?" Priya said. "The big one with the curved base?" Rowan's face shuddered. "No." "Oh, sorry, I thought someone said your name was on that." "Cassidy's was." The name landed. Not loudly, but enough. Priya, who knew nothing and sensed everything, excused herself to rescue a child from a bowl of chips. I stayed because my feet were stupid. Rowan stared at the string lights for a moment. "She took photos from my website," she said, not looking at me. "Years ago. Sent them to a client as her own concept work. She was visiting. I didn't know until the client called my studio asking why my sister's invoice was different." My stomach turned. "Rowan." It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it smaller. Her eyes moved to mine. In the warm lights, the scar through her brow looked silver. No, it just makes it boring to explain. I understood that too well. The exhaustion of having to narrate harm so other people could decide whether it counted. Did she apologize? Rowan's laugh was quiet and flat. She said I should be flattered she thought my work was good enough to steal. I closed my eyes briefly. God. Then she cried because I was being harsh. Also God. And somehow our mother ended up telling me to be less rigid. There it was. A whole family system in one sentence, offered without drama because drama had probably been used against her. I wanted to reach for her. I did not. I had forfeited that ease by retreating. I'm sorry, I said. I know you don't know where to put it, but I'm sorry anyway. Rowan held my gaze, and something in her expression shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Thanks. Then Mr. Alvarez called her over to sit on the new bench for a photo, and she went, leaving me with the salad and a fresh, ugly understanding. Cassidy had not simply hidden Rowan. She had used her. That night, Delia called while I washed potluck containers. So, she said, any updates from Twin Peaks? Lesbian edition? Please never call it that again. No promises. I told her about the table, the stolen photos, the way Rowan had said it was boring to explain. Delia went quiet in the way she did when she was setting humor down carefully. That poor woman. I know. And you? Me what? Are you still pretending not to have feelings? I scrubbed a perfectly clean lid. I'm trying to determine whether the feelings are ethical. Feelings are not grant proposals. Formatting won't make them ethical. Unhelpful. Accurate. I leaned against the counter. Through the kitchen window, Rowan's studio was dark except for a small lamp near the workbench. What if I'm just drawn to the chance to have Cassidy's face be kind to me? Delia sighed. Then you need therapy and possibly a dramatic haircut. But from what you've told me, you're drawn to Rowan's patience, competence, grumpy soup practices, raccoon response protocol, and hands. You mention her hands a statistically suspicious amount. I do not. You said, and I quote, her hands look like they understand furniture and moral responsibility. That was private. You sent it in a voice memo labeled, "Don't let me text her," so legally it belongs to history. I laughed, then stopped because my throat tightened. I don't want to use her to heal something she didn't break. Then don't, but don't use that fear as an excuse to disappear either. After we hung up, I stood in the dark kitchen and admitted, not out loud, but close, that I missed Rowan. Not the face, Rowan's dry replies, Rowan's rare laugh, Rowan's careful, quiet way of making a place safer without announcing she had done it. Missing someone specific is dangerous. It removes plausible deniability. The second fragment came at the coffee shop 2 days later. I had given up on the inferior 6-block latte and returned to my usual place, where the barista now called me Mara with pointed triumph. Rowan was at a corner table with a sketchbook, pencil moving in short, decisive lines. I almost turned around. She looked up before I could. The moment held. Then she glanced at the empty chair across from her. Not an invitation exactly. More like a door left unlocked. I ordered coffee and sat. Hi, I said, a word on which I somehow managed to hang apology, hope, and mild gastrointestinal distress. Hi, she kept the pencil in her hand. How's the wall raccoon? Quiet, possibly plotting. They usually do. Silence. I hated myself enough to try honesty. I've been weird. Rowan's eyebrow rose. I wasn't going to say it first. I deserve that. Yes. I laughed once. Her mouth twitched. It helped. I got scared, I said. Not of you. Because of you. Around you. Adjacent to you. Prepositions are failing me. Mara. Right. I wrapped both hands around my cup. I'm trying not to make Cassidy your problem, and in doing that, I made Cassidy your problem. Rowan looked out the window, where rain traced the glass. She has a talent for becoming the problem in rooms she isn't in. Yeah, I don't need you to pretend the resemblance isn't there. I know what my face looks like. I hate that sentence. I hate living in it. The simplicity of it stopped me. Rowan looked back at me then, and I saw the cost under her composure. There was someone, she said after a moment. Before I moved here, Elise. We were together almost a year. I stayed very still. Cassidy came to visit. I didn't want her to, but my parents were pushing, and I thought maybe if I kept it short. She shook her head once. Elise had never met her. One night Cassidy showed up at the restaurant where Elise worked, wearing my jacket, hair like mine. She told Elise I was tired of her, that I didn't know how to end it, that I had asked her to help. My breath caught. Rowan's face remained controlled, but the pencil bent slightly in her hand. Elise believed her? For about 20 minutes. Long enough. Jesus, Rowan. Cassidy said it was a joke. Then she said it was Elise's fault for not knowing me better. Then she said it was my fault for making my life so easy to borrow. The pencil snapped. It was a small sound. Rowan looked down at the broken pieces as if surprised by her own hand. I reached across the table before thinking, then stopped an inch from her wrist. Can I asked. Her eyes flicked to my hand. After a long second, she nodded. I touched her wrist lightly, just above the place where her pulse beat. Not a grab, not comfort I had not earned. A contact. Her skin was warm. She closed her eyes for half a second, and the entire coffee shop seemed to fall away. When she opened them, I removed my hand. I'm sorry, I said again. I know it's boring to explain. It's less boring when someone believes me the first time. I do. I know. Those 2 words felt like a plank laid over a gap. Not a bridge yet. A beginning. We did not fix anything that morning. People think important conversations arrive with orchestral certainty, but often they happen over mediocre coffee with a broken pencil between you, and afterward, you still have to answer emails about chickpea puffs. Still, something changed. I stopped avoiding her. Not completely, because I remained a woman with the emotional coordination of a folding chair, but enough. We resumed small contacts. Rowan fixed my sticking downstairs window without making a production of it. I brought her muffins from a bakery because I had bought 6 during a stress spiral and could not be trusted alone with them. She said, bribery? I said, community engagement. She ate too. A week later, she invited me to dinner in a manner so indirect I nearly missed it. We were standing in her studio doorway while rain darkened the yard. She was sanding the edge of a table, and I had come over to return a clamp she had lent me after I decided to hang shelves and discovered that walls have opinions. I made too much stew, she said. That a known woodworking technique? Sometimes I cook. With emergency intent, yes. If you're hungry, come by at 7. She did not look at me when she said it. She kept sanding, the movement steady. My heart attempted a cartwheel and landed badly. Are you inviting me to dinner because you made too much stew, or did you make too much stew because you wanted to invite me to dinner? The sanding stopped. Rowan looked up. I immediately wished to enter witness protection as Nora again. Then she said, yes. I stared. That was devastatingly efficient. 7, she said, and went back to work. Dinner at Rowan's house was not romantic if romance required candles, music, or someone describing wine with adjectives normally reserved for weather. It was romantic if romance could be a chipped blue bowl, a loaf of bread warmed in the oven, rain tapping the windows, and Rowan listening as if my words were not auditioning for the right to exist. We talked about work first. Safe things, clients, design revisions. A woman who had once asked me to make a logo more emotionally beige. Rowan told me about a man who wanted a dining table that looked handmade, but also perfect, like from a factory, and how she had suggested he buy one from a factory and enjoy his peace. I laughed hard enough to spill stew on my sleeve. Very smooth, she said, handing me a cloth. I'm known for elegance. I've seen you threaten a gate in lemon pants. That gate had it coming. After dinner, she showed me the studio properly, not through the fence gap like a criminal. The space was warm from a small heater, filled with the scents I had come to associate with her. Cedar, walnut, oil, rain on concrete. Boards leaned against one wall, each labeled in pencil. Tools hung in precise rows. A half-finished chair sat near the bench, graceful, even unfinished. Rowan touched its back with 2 fingers as she passed, not possessively, more like greeting. This is beautiful, I said. It's not done. Still. She looked at it, then at me. Cassidy used to say unfinished things made her nervous. Cassidy thought dust was a moral failure. She told you that? Several times, usually while looking at my bookshelves as if they had personally betrayed her. Rowan's mouth curved. She hated my studio. Of course she did. It's full of evidence that effort exists. Rowan laughed, and there it was again, that escaped, unguarded sound. I turned toward her too quickly. She noticed. The laughter faded, but not into distance, into awareness. We stood beside the workbench, close enough that I could see a small shaving of wood caught near her collar. I wanted to brush it away. I wanted many things, most of them unwise to say aloud beside a table saw. Rowan's gaze dropped to my mouth, then lifted. The air thickened. Mara, she said quietly. I'm here, I said, because my brain had apparently chosen sincerity by accident. Her expression changed at that, something opening and hurting at once. Then the studio light flickered, and I, overwhelmed by tenderness, desire, fear, and the need to release pressure before I combusted, said, Your chair is making this very intense. Rowan blinked. For one terrible second, I thought I had ruined my life. Then she laughed so hard she had to turn away, one hand braced on the bench. I'm sorry, I said, laughing too, mortified. I don't know why I said that. The chair appreciates being included. I panic when furniture judges me. She looked back at me, still smiling, and in that moment, I saw her. Fully, cleanly, with no ghost sliding over her features. Not because the resemblance vanished. It did not. Cassidy's face was still there in the arrangement of bones and mouth and eyes, but Rowan inhabited it so completely that it became hers in my mind. The scar through her brow, the sawdust at her throat, the steadiness, the reluctant humor, the way she did not fill silence to control it, the way she made beautiful things, and then insisted they were not done because she knew the difference between appearance and structure. My chest ached with the force of it. Oh, I said softly. Rowan's smile faded. What? Nothing. I searched for a sentence that would not sound like I had suffered a neurological event. I just realized something. About the chair. Tragically, no. She watched me. The room waited. I should have told her then. I should have said, I see you. I am sorry it took me work to get here, but I see you. Instead, I got scared of the size of the truth and made it smaller. You have sawdust on your shirt, I said. Rowan looked down. I usually do. Right, yes, occupational hazard. Mara. Her voice was gentle enough to undo me. I reached out, slowly this time, and brushed the shaving from her collar. My fingers grazed the warm skin near her throat. She inhaled. I felt it. She did not move away. The moment stretched, delicate and real. Then my phone rang from my back pocket with the custom tone I had not changed because apparently I enjoy leaving bear traps in my own life. Cassidy's name lit the screen. For a second, I did not understand what I was seeing. Cassidy had not called in months. After the breakup, she had sent a few messages dressed as concern and shaped like hooks, then silence. Now her name glowed in Rowan's studio, absurd and catastrophic. My whole body reacted before my mind did. I stepped back, stepped. My hand flew to the phone. My face must have changed because Rowan's did too. Don't, she said, but I did not know whether she meant don't answer, don't look like that, or don't turn me into her. The phone kept ringing. Cassidy's contact photo, a picture I had forgotten to delete, smiled up from the screen with perfect lighting. I declined the call. Immediately, a text appeared. Heard you moved. Portland suits runaways. Call me, Mar. Nobody called me Mar except Cassidy, and only when she wanted ownership to sound affectionate. My stomach dropped so hard I felt cold. How did she get my address? I whispered. Rowan went very still. She has your address? I don't know. She knows Portland. She might not. Another text arrived. Cute blue house, by the way. Pear tree is dramatic. For a moment, the studio tilted. I gripped the edge of the bench. Mara? Rowan's voice came from far away. She knows. Let me see. I handed her the phone because my hand was shaking. Rowan read the messages, and I watched fury move through her, not as explosion, but as temperature dropping. Did you tell her? She asked. The words were reasonable. The tone was not. What? No. Did you talk to her before this? No. Did you post the house? No, Rowan, I'm not. Still hoping she'd find you? The sentence cut the room in half. I stared at her. She looked back, face pale under the workshop light, eyes sharp with a pain so old it knew exactly where to strike. That's not fair, I said. No. No. She calls, and you look like the floor disappeared. She texts, and suddenly, there she is, between us, again. I didn't invite her. You brought her with you. I flinched. Rowan saw it and seemed to hate herself for a fraction of a second, but she did not stop. Maybe not on purpose. Maybe that's worse. Maybe I was arrogant to think you ever looked at me and saw anyone else. I did, I said, too late, too frantic. I do. Do you? The same question from the soup night, but now sharpened. Or am I just the version of her you can stand to want? Rowan? No. She stepped back, putting the workbench between us. The half-finished chair stood beside her like a witness. I can't be the safer twin, Mara. I can't be the correction. I can't be the face that apologizes for the other face. That's not what you are. It's what this feels like. Her voice cracked on the last word, just barely, and that hurt more than if she had shouted. I spent my whole life being mistaken for her, used by her, blamed for what she broke. I won't do it in my own house. I'm sorry. So am I. She held out my phone. I took it. Her fingers did not touch mine. You should go. The walk from Rowan's studio to my house was 12 steps through wet grass and the longest distance I had ever traveled. I went inside and locked the door. Then I sank to the kitchen floor, because apparently that was my preferred location for major emotional events, and stared at Cassidy's texts until the words blurred. Another message came. Don't be dramatic. I'm in town for work. We should talk like adults. Then another. Unless your new neighbor told you not to. I almost threw the phone across the room. Instead, I blocked her. My hand shook so badly I had to try twice. Blocking someone should have felt triumphant. It felt like turning off a radio after the house had already filled with smoke. Delia called before I could call her, possibly because best friends are witches with data plans. I just got a psychic migraine, she said. What happened? I told her everything. Not beautifully, not in order. There was a lot of crying and several insults directed at Cassidy that I will not repeat because Delia has a gift for profanity that belongs in museums. When I finished, she was quiet. Are you safe? I think so. She's not at the door. I blocked her. Good. Screenshot everything. Already did. Good. Now about Rowan. I pressed my forehead to my knees. She thinks I'm still in love with Cassidy. Are you? The question hurt because it was kind. I expected outrage on my behalf. Delia gave me a door. No, I said. Then after a long breath, but I'm still afraid of her. And I hate that sometimes fear looks like longing from the outside. Does any part of you want Cassidy back? No. I want the version of myself I kept trying to become for her to shut up and leave me alone. That's different. I know. Does Rowan know? I laughed bitterly. She closed the door before I could submit my essay. Maybe don't submit an essay. I love essays. I know. It's one of your top 5 coping mechanisms, right after jokes and moving across a continent. I wiped my face. What do I do? You stop trying to be understood immediately. You sit with the fact that Rowan's reaction came from a wound you accidentally stepped on while wearing tap shoes. You make sure Cassidy can't keep intruding. Then, when you're not vibrating like a haunted fork, you tell Rowan the truth without demanding she absolve you. That sounds mature and terrible. Most useful things are. I did not sleep much. Cassidy tried calling from a blocked number twice, then sent an email with the subject line. Really? I did not open it. I created a folder titled "Do Not Feed the Ghost," moved it there, and felt a grim little spark of pride. In the morning, I called Hattie, told her an ex had found my address, and asked whether anyone had contacted her about me. Hattie's voice turned from warm to steel in half a second. Absolutely not. I don't give out tenant information. Send me the number. I'll document it. Then she added, Do you want the locks changed? I almost cried again. Yes, please. Rowan can do it faster than anyone, but I can call someone else. The mention of Rowan's name landed softly and sharply. Someone else, I said, because asking Rowan to secure my door after she had closed hers felt cruel. Hattie said she understood. The next few days passed in a suspended quiet. Cassidy did not appear in person. Later, I learned she had been in Portland for a conference and found my house through a tagged potluck photo, my blue porch and pear tree in the background. It was not a master plan. Cassidy rarely needed master plans. She followed openings other people did not know they had left. I deleted my old social media, tightened every privacy setting, changed my phone number with the grim efficiency of a woman canceling a subscription to hell. Rowan and I did not speak. I saw her once across the street, loading a cabinet into her truck with another woman from the neighborhood. She looked tired. I looked away first, not because I did not want to see her, but because wanting had become an ache with nowhere to go. Grand gestures tempted me. I am a designer. We love dramatic presentations. I imagined writing Rowan a long letter, creating some elegant printed confession with tasteful typography, and perhaps a diagram titled "Things I See That Are Rowan." Rowan did not need a campaign. She needed not to be turned into an object lesson in my healing. She needed me to know what I wanted when no one was watching, when Cassidy's shadow was not forcing urgency into the room. So I sat with it. I walked through Portland in the rain because Portland encourages brooding outdoors. I took the bus downtown and wandered Powell's for 2 hours, touching book spines and buying nothing. I sat in Laurelhurst Park on a bench, slick with mist, and watched ducks move across the pond with the smug competence of creatures who had never dated my ex. The maples had gone red and gold, and wet leaves stuck to my boots. I thought about Cassidy, honestly, maybe for the first time without either defending her or prosecuting her. She had been charming. That mattered. Harmful people are not harmful every second. If they were, we would leave sooner and songs would be much shorter. Cassidy had known how to make me feel chosen in a room full of people. She had also known how to make that chosen feeling conditional, how to tug it back until I performed gratitude for crumbs. I had loved her. That was true. She had hurt me. That was true. I did not want her back. Also true. My body's fear was not a secret desire. It was a bruise flinching before the hand arrived. Rowan deserved to hear that, but she did not owe me the hearing. When I got home, I found the small cedar rectangle on my desk, the one that said, Gate Goblin. I had kept it because of course I had. I turned it over in my hand, feeling the smoothness she had made. Then I looked at the crooked shelves I had hung in my living room, the ones Rowan's clamp had helped me install, and I had an idea so modest it frightened me more than a grand gesture. I would make something badly. Not for display, not to impress a carpenter, which would be like challenging the ocean to a water contest. I would make something honest. Hattie's shed contained leftover wood, a handsaw, sandpaper, and a workbench that wobbled with drunk confidence. I spent an entire Saturday trying to build a small box. That was all. A box with a hinged lid, in theory. In practice, it began as a box, became a parallelogram, briefly flirted with becoming firewood, and eventually settled into being a container with strong opinions. I measured incorrectly. I cut worse. I swore so creatively Senator the cat left the yard. I sanded until my fingers ached. I learned that wood did not care about narrative symbolism. It cared about grain, pressure, patience, and whether you were trying to force two pieces together that had not been cut to meet. Subtle. Wood. Very subtle. By evening, the box existed. It was not beautiful. The corners were uneven, and the lid sat proud on one side. But it opened. It held. Inside, I placed the cedar rectangle Rowan had given me, then removed it, because that was mine. Instead, I placed a folded note, short enough to resist my essay instincts. On the outside of the box, I penciled one line. Not a correction, a beginning. Then I carried it next door and left it on the threshold of Rowan's studio. Not her house, her space, her terms. I did not knock. I went home and stared at my phone like it was a live animal. No text came. Night fell. Rain began. I told myself that no answer was an answer and tried to respect it. Then, just after 9, there was a knock at my back door. Rowan stood on the steps in a dark sweater, rain in her hair, the box in her hands. My heart climbed into my throat. "You built this," she said. "Allegedly." Her eyes moved over my face with something softer than anger. "It's crooked. Deeply. On several levels. The sanding is decent. Thank you. I injured myself emotionally." She looked down at the penciled words. "Can I come in?" I stepped back. Yes. My kitchen was warmer than the night, but not warm enough for how my hands trembled. Rowan set the box on the table. She did not sit immediately. She looked around as if seeing the house again, the unpacked life that had slowly become mine. Finally, she pulled out a chair. I sat across from her, a terrible mirror of the soup night. This time there were no bowls between us, just the crooked box. "I read the note," she said. I swallowed. "Okay." It was short. "Delia would be proud." "Delia?" "Best friend. Boston. Voice message goblin. She has strong opinions about my character flaws." A faint curve touched Rowan's mouth. "Smart woman." "Annoyingly." Rowan ran her thumb along the edge of the box. "You said you blocked Cassidy." "I did. I changed my number, too. I sent the messages to Hattie in case she tries anything with the rental." "Good." "She found me through a potluck photo. Not because I told her. Not because I wanted her to." Rowan closed her eyes briefly. "I know." The words came quietly. "I figured that out. Priya posted it. I saw it after." "Oh, I should have told you. You were hurt. I was cruel. I wanted to deny it because her pain made me generous. But generosity that erases harm is just fear dressed nicely." "Yes," I said. "A little." She nodded once, accepting the truth like a board she had chosen to carry. "I'm sorry. Thank you." Silence settled. Not easy, but real. Rowan looked at me. "I heard her name and watched you disappear." My throat tightened. "I know." I thought I knew what that meant. I would have thought the same if I were you. Maybe. Her fingers stilled on the box. But I didn't ask. I decided. I took a breath. When Cassidy called, I wasn't longing for her. I was scared. My body reacted before I could think. I hate that. I hate that she can still reach across a phone and make me feel 28 and stupid and grateful for whatever mood she's in. But that isn't love. Not anymore. Rowan watched me carefully. What is it? A bruise, I said. A habit. A ghost with my old address. And I know I brought parts of that here. I know I looked at you at first and saw the shock of her. I hate that too. I can't pretend the face didn't matter. It did. It scared me. It confused me. Sometimes it still startles me for half a second when the light hits wrong. And I'm sorry, but that half second is not the whole truth. Rowan's eyes shone, though she did not cry. What is? I looked at her hands on my crooked box, the scar across her thumb, the roughness, the care with which she touched even an ugly thing because it had been made. The truth is that you laugh like it surprises you. You listen like you're holding weight with both hands. You make soup because emergencies happen. You hate cilantro and clients who insult wood. You get still when you're angry, and you put pencils behind your ear, and you say 3 words when other people would use 30, which is frankly rude to those of us who process out loud. Her mouth trembled. I kept going before fear could edit me. The truth is that I started noticing differences because I needed proof you weren't her. Then I kept noticing because the differences were you. And somewhere in there, the face stopped being the center. I don't want you because you look like Cassidy. I want you in spite of the fact that the universe has a disgusting sense of humor. A laugh broke out of her, small and wet. That's your confession? Unfortunately, yes. I can revise for tone. Don't! She looked down at the box again. Not a correction, a beginning. I don't want to rewrite Cassidy with you. I don't want you to fix what she broke. I don't even know what this can be. I just know I see you. Not perfectly every second, because I'm still me and my brain owns several haunted filing cabinets. But I see you, Rowan. And I'm sorry it took me fear and a raccoon and an ugly box to say it. Rowan was quiet for so long, I began preparing my soul for dignified rejection. Then she stood. My heart stopped. She picked up the box, crossed the kitchen, and set it on the windowsill beside the sink. It's not ugly, she said. You do not have to lie at a time like this. I'm not. It's unskilled. That feels worse. It's honest. She turned back to me. You tried to force the corners. I did. Then you adjusted. After swearing, that counts. She came closer, slow enough that I could misunderstand nothing. The kitchen light made her eyes dark, green near the center. Cassidy's eyes, once. Rowan's eyes now. Only Rowan's. I can't promise I won't get scared too, she said. I know. I can't be patient with being mistaken for her. I'm not asking you to. And if Cassidy shows up again, we call Hattie and possibly the raccoon. Another small laugh. She reached for my hand then, and the simplicity of it nearly undid me. Her fingers slid between mine. Warm, calloused, real. Mara. She said my name like a place she was choosing to stand. Yes? Come to the studio with me. It was not a command. It was not quite a question. It was Rowan offering her own ground. I nodded. We walked through the back door, across the wet grass, and into the studio where the heater hummed and the half-finished chair waited under its cloth. Rain ticked against the roof. The lamps were low, amber on wood and tools and the long workbench. Rowan did not turn on the overhead light. She faced me in the space that smelled like cedar and oil, where I had first watched her through a fence gap and mistaken distance for safety. This is where I know who I am, she said. I think that's why I was angriest. You brought her here. I'm sorry. I know. She stepped closer. I wanted you here anyway. That made me angrier. I breathed a laugh. I have that effect on structured people. You do. Her gaze dropped to our joined hands. When you touched my collar that night, I thought, this is either the worst idea I've ever had or the first good one in a long time. Which did you decide? Still gathering evidence. Very fair. You talk when you're nervous. I talk when I'm awake. Mara. The way she said it quieted me. She lifted her free hand and touched my cheek. Not with the theatrical softness I remembered from Cassidy, who had always made affection feel observed even when we were alone. Rowan touched me like she was checking grain, like she trusted her hand to tell the truth. Her thumb moved once, barely, along my cheekbone. I closed my eyes because being seen can feel brighter than light. Open, she whispered. I did. She was there. Same face, different world. The scar, the guarded mouth, the laugh, waiting where she tried to hide it. The woman who had survived being treated as an echo and still built solid things. I see you, I said, because I needed her to hear it in the room where it mattered. Rowan's breath caught. Then she kissed me. There was nothing borrowed in it, nothing repaired for someone else's benefit. Her mouth was warm and careful at first, a question with steady hands. I answered by stepping closer, by letting my fingers curl in the soft wool at her side, by feeling the tremor that moved through her when I kissed her back. It was not fireworks. I distrust fireworks. They are loud, brief, and often illegal. This was a lamp being lit in a house I had thought abandoned. This was rain on the roof, and cedar in the air, and Rowan's hand at my jaw, firm enough to be present, gentle enough to let me choose. When we parted, her forehead rested against mine. She laughed once, breathless. What? I whispered. I'm thinking about the chair. I pulled back just enough to stare at her. Excuse me? It's judging us. The laugh that left me was embarrassing in volume and perfect in feeling. Rowan smiled fully then, unguarded, and the sight went through me like warmth. I kissed that smile because I could, because she allowed it, because wanting her no longer felt like a crime scene. We stayed in the studio a long time. We did not solve every old hurt. Love, I would learn, is not a mop you drag across the past until everything shines. Some boards keep the mark of where they split, but there are ways to build with damaged wood if you stop pretending it was never damaged. Rowan and I moved slowly after that, partly because we were careful and partly because we were both stubborn enough to mistake pacing for virtue. We had coffee. We had dinner. We walked through neighborhoods bright with wet leaves and argued about whether abstract public art was brave or merely undersupervised. I introduced her to Delia over video call, which was a mistake only because Delia wore a blazer for intimidation and opened with, "So you're the carpenter with the morally responsible hands." Rowan looked at me. I looked at the ceiling. Delia was delighted. Rowan, traitorously, liked her. Cassidy tried once more, weeks later, from a new email address, with a message so perfectly calibrated between apology and accusation that I almost admired the craftsmanship. I did not answer. I showed Rowan, not because I needed permission, but because secrecy had been one of the doors Cassidy used. Rowan read it, handed back my phone, and said, "Starve the ghost." So I did. Winter came softly to Portland, gray and green and wet. My blue rental stopped feeling like a temporary shelter and became a home with bad plumbing and a pear tree that still attempted seasonal manslaughter. Rowan fixed the gate properly, though she claimed it was for her own sanity and not because she liked seeing me lean over it with coffee. I kept the crooked box on my kitchen windowsill until she stole it one afternoon and returned it 3 days later with the corners gently corrected, the lid fitted cleanly, and a note inside that said, "Adjusted, not erased." I cried, obviously. Then I accused her of emotional woodworking, which she accepted as a compliment. Looking back now, I think the hardest part was not leaving Cassidy. It was learning that leaving was not the same as being free. Freedom was smaller and more repetitive. It was blocking the number, changing the lock, throwing away the candle, telling the truth before it became a performance. Looking at a face that once meant pain and allowing it, slowly, honestly, to become the face of a woman who was not responsible for saving me and chose to stand beside me anyway. Rowan once told me, wood remembers weather, pressure, the direction it was cut, and the hands that shaped it. You cannot bully it into becoming what it is not. You can only learn its nature and work with it. I think people are like that too, though I would never say this to Rowan in so many words because she would accuse me of turning lumber into a metaphor and then kiss me until I forgot my defense. I moved across the country to escape my ex, which sounds dramatic because it was. I found my new neighbor wearing her face, which sounds impossible because it nearly was. But the woman I fell in love with was not a reflection, not a replacement, not a kinder ending to an old story. She was Rowan, who smelled like cedar, hated cilantro, built tables that could outlast grief, and laughed like joy had snuck up behind her. And when she kissed me in the doorway of her studio months later, rain silvering the yard behind us and my crooked box sitting on her shelf where she kept the things she refused to throw away, I understood that I had not driven west to find a place where the past could not follow. The past follows. It is annoyingly fit. I had driven west to find a life where, when it arrived breathless at my door, I could choose not to let it in. Rowan's hand found mine, calloused thumb brushing the scar on my knuckle from the day I built that ridiculous box, and she smiled at me with a face I knew completely and was still learning by heart. "You okay?" she asked. I looked at our joined hands, at the open studio, at the blue house next door glowing through the rain, and for once my answer did not need a joke to survive. "Yeah," I said, "I'm here."